من يحكم العالم اليوم.
World of 200 sovereign nation states will end up being replaced by a world of 4 or 5 power blocks.
يعني تتوقع أن يكون في حرب نووية؟
There's no easy answer to your question.
يعني هذه الجزيرة الصغيرة كانت تحكم العالم.
We then, in an act of absolutely supreme national folly, decided to leave the European Union.
القادة الحاليين إذا كانوا القادة الأوروبيين ولا the orange man as they call it يعني ولا بوتين، هل هم من الحكمة إن هم ما يدوسوش على الزرار؟
Trump did launch a military invasion of Greenland, then he'll get it. No one's capable of stopping him.
تطويل أمد الحرب الوكالة هو ما هو إلا اقتصاد عسكري عالمي جديد.
But there are countries who are perfectly capable of backing both sides in a war at the same time.
سؤال مين بيحكم العالم النهاردة يبان بسيط، لكن كل ما نقرب منه نكتشف ان الحكم مش قرار واحد ولا قوة واحدة، بل شبكة معقدة من نفوذ، مصالح، تحالفات، وخوف دايم من التصعيد. في الحلقة دي مش بنحاول نطلع بإجابة جاهزة، لكن بنحاول نفهم مين هم الفاعلين الحقيقيين، ازاي بتتكون القوة، وليه العالم بقى بيدير الصراعات أكتر ما بيحسمها. ضيفنا النهاردة شخص شاف الأسئلة دي من جوه غرف القرار وتعامل مع مفهوم القوة كمسؤولية سياسية وأمنية. معانا سير نيك هارفي، وزير الدولة السابق للقوات المسلحة في بريطانيا والرئيس التنفيذي حاليا ليوروبيان موفمنت UK. نورتنا شرفتنا سيك نيك هارفي وشكرا لقبول الدعوة.
I'm delighted to be here and looking forward to a discussion.
خلينا نبدأ بسؤال عارف انه هو كبير قوي ويحتاج حلقات مننا، ألا وهو من يحكم العالم اليوم؟
Yes, as you say, this is a very big question and there isn't a simple answer. But the truth is that big business interests run the world to a greater extent than people realize. And although politicians and governments do their best to try and regulate the activities of big business, because business is global and government is not, the reality is that big business interests have at least as much power as any variant of government, and probably rather more. That's not to say, of course, that they rule the world in its entirety. But before you and I begin to talk about the activities of different governments working together, different international organizations, it's just worth remembering that one of the most powerful players globally that isn't really part of any of that is big business.
طيب خلينا نقول، حضرتك قلت ان الحكومات غير حرة بل الاقتصاد هو حر. لو ترجمنا الجملة دي، أكبر اقتصاد موجود وأكبر متحكم في السوق الحر هو أمريكا. فبالمعطى ده نقدر نقول إن أمريكا هي القوة المسيطرة حاليا أو القوة التي تدير العالم.
Yes, that is correct. And a lot of these big companies are also American companies. But there are lots of big companies trading globally that are not American. But yes, for the time being at least, I would say America remains the world's leading superpower. The Cold War, which saw a balance of power between America and the Soviet Union, came to an end 35, 36, 37 years ago now. And America has really dominated the world in a fairly unipolar sense since then. The world has changed a lot during that time. Russia isn't really a huge force to be reckoned with anymore. China is the emerging force on the block. India is a growing power. There are others also. And the era of outright US domination is undoubtedly coming to an end. That doesn't mean that the USA is going away or won't remain a very significant global power, but in a sense we're getting back to a world where there was a bit of a balance of power. I think in the foreseeable future between US and China. But as I say, there are there are other emerging powers, and I wonder if we aren't becoming more of a multipolar world. I think, the world of 200 sovereign nation states will end up being replaced by a world of 4 or 5 power blocks, and how they relate with each other will dictate a great deal of what the world looks like in the next century.
يعني احنا ممكن نقول ان احنا بنشهد تغير من القوى المسيطرة من بعد حتى خاصة انهيار الاتحاد السوفيتي ألا وهي أمريكا لدلوقتي العالم متعدد الأقطاب. احنا نقدر نقول ان دلوقتي العالم، ولا ممكن نقول ان القوة اللي كانت مسيطرة ألا وهي الولايات المتحدة الأمريكية بتتلاشى وبتظهر قوة صاعدة جديدة ألا وهي الصين؟
Both. I think that the USA is not becoming weaker in absolute terms. It's just that rapid development in other parts of the world means that others are catching up with it economically. And there's no way that China and India and other countries are going to be willing to be subservient to the US worldview or their attempts to impose their rules-based system on other people. But it's not a question that total power is going to transfer from the US to China. It's that the US is going to have to get back into a mindset of sort of equilibrium and balance and understand that it's no longer enjoying outright supremacy. Others have gone through this. The British Empire has its sunset. It doesn't mean we've gone away or we're not there, but we have to be realistic. We're a very different player in the world order than we were 150 years ago. And America will have to come to terms with some of these realities. Doesn't mean it should roll over on its back, but it's going to have to get used to a different environment. And if the Americans try too hard to resist that, we're going to have trouble. And if the Chinese seek total world domination in their own right, we're going to have trouble. They too have to accept that although they are a huge country with vast population, superb technological leadership and advances, they're not going to rule the world. They've got to accept a balance as well. And in a sense, it'll be the way these blocks rub up alongside each other that will determine our quality of life globally in the future.
طيب خليني أسأل سؤال. لو نفترض أن القوة أيا كانت، إذا كانت الولايات المتحدة أو تشاينا أو حتى أوروبا، لو نفترض أن دي القوة المسيطرة على العالم، السؤال هنا إزاي بتوصل القوة المسيطرة لهذا الوضع تكون قوة مسيطرة على العالم؟ إيه الباث أو الروت بتاع إن إحنا نوصل إن أنا أوصل لقوة مسيطرة أتحكم في القرار العالمي؟ recipe.
I mean, I would have liked to have sat here and talked to you about the UN and the World Trade Organization and the rules-based order, and have suggested to you that that was a machinery that was mature and stable enough for this gradual transfer, sharing, disseminating of power to happen naturally and to evolve smoothly. And maybe, it yet will. But we are talking about completely new, uncharted waters. We don't really know how this is going to happen. And certainly neither the US nor China nor some other big players treat the international world order with great reverence or respect. There's an element of power play as well as playing nicely according to some agreed rules.
خليني أقطع حضرتك هنا. في مؤتمر دافوس رئيس الوزراء الكندي قال جملة قوية جدا عن الانترناشنال لو، وقال إن هو يعني ممكن مش اترجم اللي قاله ان هو فيكشن ميث احنا كلنا اتفقنا عليه عشان نخدم مصالحنا. حضرتك دلوقتي بتتكلم على الانترناشونال لو والنظام العالمي، لكن القادة نفسهم الأوروبيين أو الغربيين بيعبروا عكس ده ويقولوا لا ان هو احنا اتفقنا على ده عشان ننفذ مصالحنا. دلوقتي مصالحنا بالعكس بقت بتتضرر من النظام العالمي ده.
Yes, yes, he is correct. I mean, you know, to the victor the spoils. The countries that emerged from World War II victorious largely determined the terms of the post-war settlement. The UN was created, NATO was created. In due course, the WTO was created. And it maybe masked the fact that power play, might, still has quite a lot to do with it. And now that the plates are shifting, this is all a bit more evident to people, and it's more worrying, and it creates uncertainty, which is not good for the global economy. And people at Davos were worried. I mean, they were worried that a US president was behaving in such a cavalier fashion. So Mark Carney was the sort of star of the show in alerting the world to what is going on and suggesting that we mustn't abandon shared values that many in the West would regard as sacrosanct.
خلينا نرجع تاني للسؤال اللي مفككه من يحكم العالم ونسأل إلى أي مدى يمكن استبدال القوة المسيطرة بالقوة الصاعدة؟ لو نفترض دلوقتي ان كان في قوة زي ما احنا قلنا الولايات المتحدة الأمريكية وفي قوة صاعدة تشاينا الهند او اي قوة صاعدة اخرى، كيف يمكن ان تسيطر القوة الصاعدة على القوى المهيمنة او تحل محلها؟
It will be led by economic power. I mean, that's what counts most on a day-to-day basis. Yes, in the background there are issues of military power. They're of most significance, perhaps when there's some sort of a military engagement, but the principle of deterrence is really what nations are investing in when they build up military power. That's part of the equation too. Also, I mean, as new powers emerge, they will have influence in more and more parts of the globe. So we've seen, for example, the Chinese very active on the African continent, buying mineral rights, investing on behalf, partnering with African governments to build infrastructure, giving those contracts to Chinese companies, and really settling deep roots into Africa to the extent that they probably in Africa already have as much influence as the USA, and that's likely to grow further in the future. So it's economics led. Military power is an important part of it, and political influence. You know, who can they get to ally with them? Who are going to follow which camp, as it were? And this, I know, is going to bring us on to questions presently about, you know, where is Europe in all of this? Europe is a very significant economic market. It has not been in its own right any sort of a significant military power, and has probably underplayed its hand as a political influence, maybe because it's always gone hand in hand with the USA, and that's not looking quite so sure these days. So maybe Europe will emerge as, well, it will emerge as one of the blocks in all of this. But whether it will emerge as much of a bloc as the US and China, well, I'm not so sure. But part of the equation, certainly.
زي ما حضرتك ذكرت في الأول أن لازم القوتين اللي هم القوة إذا كان الولايات المتحدة الأمريكية أو الصين لازم يتبنوا الواقع الجديد ويتعاملوا ما فيش قوة واحدة مسيطرة، وإلا هيبقى في إشكالية كبيرة للعالم كله. طب نفترض دلوقتي إن في قوة مش عاجبها الكلام ده وعايزة تسيطر، إيه هي؟ هل هنشهد حرب مثلا؟
I mean, ultimately, they both have to accept that, or we're looking at catastrophe. And history suggests that ultimately they will both have to settle into some sort of acceptance of that, as the West and the Soviet Union did during the Cold War. If one seeks total domination over the other, I mean, eventually, yes, that probably becomes a military conflagration. Well, military capability in 2026 is so much more sophisticated than anything the world has ever seen before. An outright war between superpowers could be over pretty damn quickly, one way or another. It's not something that would go on for years and years.
يعني تتوقع أن يكون في حرب نووية؟
I mean, I don't think so, because the more you look into the nuclear capability and the whole psychological theory of deterrence, the more absurd the notion of exploding a significant nuclear weapon becomes. So the British independent nuclear deterrent comprises continuous at-sea deterrence in a submarine. There's a submarine on duty at all time, sailing the high seas, armed to the teeth with what is described here as our minimal nuclear deterrent. If one submarine were to unleash its nuclear arsenal on, let us say, Moscow, maybe some people watching our discussion think, oh, well, this is going to be pretty bad news for people in Moscow and maybe for a few hundred miles around. No, this will create a nuclear winter that will affect the whole globe for at least a decade. Millions and millions and millions of people will die as a consequence of what happens, not only in Russia, but in many different parts of the globe, because of the impact that detonating that weapon will have on the global environment.
لكن سيرك، هل ترى أن القادة الحاليين إذا كان القادة الأوروبيين ولا the orange man as they call it يعني ولا بوتين، هل هم من الحكمة إن هم ما يدوسوش على الزرار؟
I pray to God that in the case of America, sane people would remain between the orange man and the button. So far as Putin and Russia is concerned, I don't think that Putin is mad. I think Putin is a perfectly rational player if you look at the world through a Russian lens.
In which aspect, Asif?
Well, Putin wants to recreate a dominant Russian empire, at least as big as the Soviet Union, and possibly bigger, more like 19th century Russian empire. He regards the events of 1989 and 90 and many of the territories that had been under the yoke of the Soviet Union becoming part of the global community and the European community. He regards this as a sort of terrible stain on Russia's history. But I think that he will take rational, maybe brutal, but broadly logical and rational steps to try and get to where he wants to be and to achieve what he wants to achieve. I don't agree with him. I don't share his values. I don't like his ambitions. I don't think that they are worthy ambitions. But I think he's, broadly speaking, a rational player. Donald Trump, I don't know. I mean, he lurches from day to day. He's forgotten what he said the week before. He's guided completely by impulse. Who knows where he would get? But we've always relied upon the American system as having a way of controlling these sorts of things.
لكن يعني يبدو ان حتى الامريكان سيستم بينهار. يعني اذا كان المحكمة العليا واذا كان الدستور هو بيخترقهم كل يوم. بالاضافة ان البعض بيقول على ترامب انه هو شخص بيسعى لمصلحة امريكا اولا.
Yes. I mean, he is the playground bully. He believes completely in the principle of might is right. Mm-hmm. I think he sees a future world order in which he and Putin and President Xi in China are the big players and nobody else counts for anything. This comes to that fantastic Mark Carney line. If you're not at the table, you're on the menu. And I think that Trump's view is that everything else is on the menu. I don't know what the guy does next. I mean, I remember these lines during his...
No one knows.
No one knows. And he doesn't. But I remember these lines during his re-election campaign that... To come out and vote for me this November, you'll only have to do it once. We'll look after it all after that. I don't know. It was a piece of rhetoric that came to him in that moment. But what does it tell us about what's going on deeper in his mind? And as you say, he drives a coach and horses through US law. He ignores all their normal checks and balances, all their institutions. I mean, it is going to be very interesting to see as 2026 progresses. There are midterm elections in November, at least we hope there are, at which he's widely expected to lose, or the Republicans are widely expected to lose control of the House of Representatives. They might even lose the power in the Senate as well. That's less likely, but I think it's highly likely that he will lose power in the House of Representatives. Thereafter, anything he pronounces and anything he wants to do which requires legislation will be very difficult for him to achieve. And indeed, I was listening to an American commentator a week or so ago, a Republican, but not a very Trumpite Republican, making the point that actually the critical date, the turning point after which Trump's power will begin gradually to ebb away is the date after which the Republican candidate in each area of the elections coming up in the autumn cannot be changed. Up to that point, they're all fearful, if I don't do what Donald Trump wants, he'll block me from being the candidate. But once the date's passed where they are the candidate, suggested this American commentator, they'll all begin to get a little bit bolder and braver. And Trump will just incrementally and slowly find that he doesn't rule the roost to quite the extent that he did before. You're then getting to the point where there are only 2 years left until another presidential election. And the extent to which in this first year he's just done absolutely whatever he pleases will become increasingly difficult unless something even stranger and worse happens than anything we've seen to date.
طيب خلينا نضع الولايات المتحدة مش نضع الولايات المتحدة جانبا كاملا، لا، لكن خليني أسأل سؤال. عن بالنظر للقوة اللي موجودة دلوقتي زي بريطانيا، الاتحاد الأوروبي، الخليج، الصين وأمريكا، أين موقع كل من الدول دي في القوة المسيطرة؟
You're asking me to make an assessment of the relative power today of America and China, or you're asking where I think the UK is as a power?
All of these powers.
I mean, I think the USA is still the more powerful global force at the moment than China, but we've already talked about this undoubtedly shifting,
yeah.
Possibly to a point, I think, where they're roughly speaking in balance. The UK is a small island in the North Atlantic and isn't...
كانت بريطانيا العظمى في يوم من الأيام، يعني هذه الجزيرة الصغيرة كانت تحكم العالم.
Yes, indeed. I mean, we are no longer a global empire, even though some fantasists among our population might like to think that we are. We had a singular position globally, unique. On the Security Council, one of the P5, one of the permanent 5 members of the Security Council, the second most powerful country in NATO, the leading among friends in the Commonwealth, and one of the big 3 in the European Union, the world's most lucrative economic bloc. Absolutely extraordinary, influential position. Soft power, not hard power, but remarkably influential thing. We then, in an act of absolutely supreme national folly, decided to leave the European Union, which was probably the most significant of all of those connections that we had. And to be brutally frank, the entire world has been laughing at us over that since the moment that we did that. However, that doesn't mean we've gone. We're still here. And we do still have friends and influence and allies and some soft power around the globe, even if it's diminished further as a result of that.
بس هل لا زالت ليها القوة مسيطرة ولا ليها جزء من السيطرة على القرار العالمي؟
It's influence rather than power. I mean, we're still one of the world's larger economies, although, I mean, a lot smaller than the US or China or mainland Europe. We still have one of the larger military capabilities, although, again, much, much smaller than America or China. We still have a global diplomatic network that's probably punching above our weight, even though idiotic bean counters in the UK Treasury have pared that back in the era of austerity. Absolute folly. I mean, goodness me, what stupidity. The closed embassies, sold off residences and so on, all for less money than the Whitehall tea budget, I should think. I mean, it's just utter folly. But there we are. But we're still here. We do still have a global footprint diplomatically.
بس حضرتك صرحت في لقاءات كثيرة إن الولايات المتحدة أصبحت rule taker not rule maker. بأخذ الجملة دي في الاعتبار يعني ليس لها تأثير.
I mean, it's one of the supreme ironies of the campaign that led up to the referendum that the hard right in the UK managed to convince people that coming out of the EU would increase our sovereignty, that we were taking back control, that would be able to make our own rules and regulations. Well, that's all very nice on paper, but the real world isn't like that, and it hasn't worked out like that in practice, because the fact of the matter is that the EU is on our doorstep. It's our nearest, closest, largest trading partner, and it is the world's most lucrative market. It's not the world's biggest market, but it's a combination of a large population with a high spending power makes it the most profitable market in the world to trade in. And the truth is that anybody who wants to sell into the European market, whether they're British, American, Chinese, Indian, or whomever, are obliged to conform with the European rules and regulations. So by leaving the EU, we haven't made ourselves freer to make our own rules. We still have to basically abide by all these European rules. Anything that we want to sell into Europe has to conform with their specification. There's absolutely no point a British manufacturer having two production lines, one working to the EU rule and another one working to a British rule. They don't do it. They just work to the European rules. And actually, you can see this globally. The European Union brought in a rule in 2012 that all cars had to have white lights lit up on the front at all times. And now pretty much all cars manufactured and sold anywhere in the world have white lights on all the time, because it's not even worth Korean or Japanese car makers doing things to different specs. They all end up working to the European specification. So actually, far from the UK taking back control, by removing ourselves from the table, we no longer contribute to what these rules and regulations are. We ceased to be a rule maker and we became a rule taker. I mean, the other thing people were told was that it would give us control over our borders and we would be able to control immigration. On the contrary, since we left, immigration has increased, not decreased, and we see these boats arriving on our beaches all the time. How do we expect to counter that if we're not working in cooperation with our European neighbours whose land everybody is coming through before they make these beach crossings into the UK? So we haven't got more power as a result of this. By walking away and turning our backs on our friends and allies, we've made ourselves we've got less control over our own lives than we had in the first place.
عرفنا موقع الولايات المتحدة، الصين، المملكة المتحدة، إنجلترا. أين موقع الاتحاد الأوروبي من هذه المعادلة، معادلة السيطرة ودول الخليج؟
The EU is a big player. It's economically powerful and significant. And American companies, going back to where we started our discussion about where is real power and who rules the world, they don't like it when the European Commission and the European Court impose fines on them and pass rules about how things operate in Europe, which then, as I've just described, tend to become the global norm. So there is some real power there, actually. The EU probably underplays its hand in terms of the amount of power it's got. And actually, by using its economic levers, it can become more powerful, I believe. Up till now, Europe has tended to work hand in hand with the US. Clearly, Donald Trump has thrown serious doubt over the extent to which Europe can rely on America. And actually, as I sit and look at the world and I think about the values which matter to me and matter to British people, a belief in democracy, a belief in the rule of law, a belief in universal human rights, a determination to try and tackle climate change, global poverty, and so on, I have to ask myself, really, does the USA in 2026 share those values to the same extent that I have believed them to throughout my lifetime? Are they really on the side of good, or are they becoming a bit ambivalent on some of these things? And actually, I think that Donald Trump and Putin, between them, are driving a greater sense of European unity than we've ever had before, And this is something that neither Putin nor Trump intends, but their actions are having this effect. And this is where I applaud Keir Starmer, the British Prime Minister, for being fast out of the blocks to make it perfectly clear that we see these changing issues through European eyes, and as Europeans, that European security is our security and that European prosperity is our prosperity. And I think this is really shifting views among the British population as to who our instinctive partner and ally really is. And actually, soon after Donald Trump returned to the Oval Office, and when he started behaving appallingly towards Ukraine and to Zelensky, memorably that disgusting scene in the Oval Office where he behaved abominably, initial polling of the British population before a debate had really actually got underway asked people, do you think we should be getting closer to the US or closer to Europe? 12% said, let's get closer to the US. 82% said, let's get closer to Europe. And I think that the UK will gradually and incrementally find its way back to the heart of Europe. It'll be better for us. It will be better for Europe. And I think we must then start looking beyond the geographical boundary of Europe to asking who else shares these fundamental values that I described a few minutes ago. And that's why it's very interesting to hear from Mark Carney and Canada, and to realise that Australia and New Zealand and Japan and South Korea and Taiwan all tend to look at the world in a similar sort of way. And there are other countries throughout Africa, Asia, that can, in the long term, naturally be part of that sort of axis as well.
خليني برضو أسأل عن الجزئية الأخيرة في السؤال ده، ألا وهي دول الخليج. بنشهد دلوقتي صعود دول الخليج، سواء إذا كان في التأثير على صناعة القرار خاصة الأمريكي ممكن نقدر نقول، والانفتاح اللي حصل في بعض دول الخليج أيضا. كيف ترى دول الخليج كمؤثر في هذه المنظومة؟
Yes, I do. We haven't really discussed that so far in this talk. They are undoubtedly so, and again, actually, you can see that the greater extent to which they cooperate with each other, the more power and influence they can push, which I think is the same thing I'm saying about Europe. And so unity of purpose and action is giving them a new influence that perhaps they didn't have 20 years ago. I mean, they've got a lot of economic power. They've still got a lot of significant oil reserves, and they're becoming increasingly confident on the global stage. And again, they're a medium-sized player of considerable importance and significance, particularly when one looks at some of the unrest in different parts of the Middle East and North Africa, and the influence of the Gulf states is profound. They're absolutely essential, I think, to any long-term solution to the Palestinian question. And Qatar in particular does all manner of things a little bit below the radar, which can be quite profound and game-changing in what they achieve.
in which يعني في أي منظور بالضبط كدور قطر ذكرته.
They have very sophisticated military capabilities that are not much remarked upon, and they have very subtle and sophisticated diplomatic capabilities as well. This is true of many of the Gulf states, but Qatar is quite a forward-leaning, ambitious player, and quietly the world is noticing.
رغم صغر حجمها جغرافيا.
Absolutely, despite its miniature size. Yes.
خلينا ندخل لمحور تاني واحنا بنتكلم عن القوة المسيطرة. حضرتك ذكرت في الأول إن في أبعاد للقوة المسيطرة، في بعد اقتصادي، في بعد عسكري، في بعد دبلوماسي وسياسي. لو نقول لو حبينا يعني نقتصر على بعد واحد ونقول إن ده ممكن يكون حاليا كافي فقط إن هو يجعل هذه القوة مسيطرة، ما هو هذا البعد؟ سؤال افتراضي أنا عارف.
I think ultimately finance and the economy is probably more significant than simply having military capability in your locker. Because what you can do with financial muscle is so much more diverse than what you can do with military muscle. I mean, this is not to ignore the punching power that having some military power gives you, but actually having lots of resource to throw at things is just so much more flexible. You can lever it in so many more ways. I mean, the Chinese have got the position they've got in Africa by levering their financial muscle and their economic muscle, not by threatening Africans with weapons.
لكن بالنظر للنموذج الروسي، يعني دلوقتي من بداية حرب روسيا على أوكرانيا، السانكشنز، العقوبات الاقتصادية اللي يعني وضعتها إذا كان الاتحاد الأوروبي ولا الولايات المتحدة على روسيا بشكل هائل، لم يؤثر إلى الآن ولا زالت الحرب قائمة. فده ممكن ياخدنا لمناظرة تانية إن لا، مش هو الجزء الاقتصادي، الجزء العسكري لا زال قائم وهو اللي بيسيطر.
Yes, it is. I mean, you were asking me to pick one. So I lent in the direction of finance and the economy, but you're absolutely right. I mean, all of these things are important. The Ukraine situation is interesting. I mean, when Putin invaded Ukraine, he expected to take the country over very quickly. He certainly did not expect this time, 4 years later, that so many millions would have been killed and injured, and that it would have bled their economic powers as much as it has. I mean, they're now running a war economy, and you can't do that indefinitely. It's a burden that your population just can't and won't be able to bear indefinitely. And I think the only reason Putin engages with Trump at all in Trump's idea that he could try and broker a solution in Ukraine is that the economic burden the Russians are carrying to sustain the war in Ukraine is really taking its toll. Now, those sanctions that you talk about would have been far more effective in bringing Russia to the negotiating table much sooner if the Chinese and the Indians and others had gone along with them. But by continuing to buy Russian oil and supply capability to Russia, they've kept it all going much longer than they needed to. And I understand that people in other parts of the world don't all look at the Ukraine situation through the same lens that I do. But to me, it's perfectly clear. Russia invaded a sovereign country next door without any reasonable excuse or pretext. And this is an abomination that cannot be tolerated. Trying to seize control of other countries by might is just not acceptable. And it's disappointing that other parts of the world can't just see that.
Okay. خلينا ننتقل بقى للتحالفات. والبعض بيرى أن زمن التحالفات الجميل بدأ يختلف، خاصة حلف الناتو اللي هو أقوى حلف موجود في العالم، وبينقسم داخليا دلوقتي زي ما بنشوف. خليني أسأل السؤال العام الأولا، وهو إيه هي دور التحالفات الدولية في الحفاظ على السلام الدولي؟
Well, I think if we look at NATO specifically, it was formed after World War II, and it has for 80 years been pretty stable. Probably the most successful pact or partnership of that sort the world has ever seen. And I suppose if it's taken 80 years for it to get into the unstable situation it is in the current moment, that's not a bad performance. One of the things I found interesting when I was a defense minister and had to have quite a lot of dealings with America is that in Europe, broadly speaking, everybody thinks of NATO as being America, with the Europeans doing what we can to support and be helpful and be as interoperable with the US as we can be. But essentially, we view it as 90% America and 10% Europe. You go over to Washington and you talk to military personnel or ordinary politicians or Pentagon staff. They talk about NATO as if America were not part of it. They think of NATO as Europe, with America patting it on the head. So through American eyes, NATO is 90% Europe and 10% America. And so when Trump starts sort of ripping up the roots of NATO, it doesn't cause the shockwaves in America that it ought to, because across the spectrum in America, they don't really think of themselves as being in NATO anyway. It's fascinating. It's a little like the way some people in the UK used to talk about Europe as if we weren't actually part of it. But of course, we fundamentally were a big part of it and one of the three big players in it. So I don't think NATO is necessarily dead, but it's certainly shaking. The question is, what will it look like after Trump has gone? It'll never look the same again. Trump has got a point, when he harangues Europe for not doing enough to look after its own security and having lazily for decades just assumed that the Americans are there as a backstop and will bail us out if we get into serious trouble. Kennedy in the 1960s was the first American president to start saying to Europe, hey guys, you need to be carrying more of this weight yourselves. As the European economies recovered from World War II and began to prosper, he was saying, you're not doing enough on your own account. And pretty much every American president since then said the same thing to Europe. We saw Trump in his first term saying this to Europe, and even after that, there didn't seem particularly to be any sign of Europe getting the message. Obama was the one who overtly and explicitly said, look, America's priority in the future is going to be more what's going on its Pacific seaboard than what's going on its Atlantic seaboard. Still, Europeans didn't wake up and smell the coffee. And now Trump has taken to all these sort of radical and outrageous things, including his ambitions to take over an ally's territory in Greenland. And finally, Europe is waking up at least to the point of talking about increasing its defence and security spending. In practice, this is going to prove extremely difficult for mature European democracies whose populations have high expectations of what their governments will do for them in terms of public services. And the idea that it is in any way simple to get defence spending in countries that are traditionally spending less than 2% up to 5%, I mean, it's all very nice to meet at summits and agree that you're going to do this. It's a totally different proposition, actually, to manage the process of doing it. But it's been quite a sober awakening for many Europeans to realise that although we've got a much bigger population than Russia, we've got a much bigger economy than Russia, we've got much more money than Russia, we've got more armed forces than Russia, nevertheless, because this has all been done through nation states, 48 of them in Europe, rather than through a central mechanism, it's all very disparate. And the truth is that if there were a peace deal in Gaza, and I have to be honest with you, I see absolutely, not in Gaza, in Ukraine, I see absolutely no sign of that coming, whatever. But if there were, and it was to fall to the Europeans to defend whatever then was the Ukrainian front line, we can't at the moment do it on our own because we have procured defence equipment over the last few decades that is highly dependent on American technology and American support. And it would take us, I think, a minimum of 10 years, even pulling together and getting our act together, to become totally independent and capable of acting on our own at times when the Americans aren't interested and don't want to help. So I want Europe to remain in NATO, but there's got to be a European a pillar of NATO, a European Defence Union, capable of acting in its own right when the Americans aren't going to be there.
Okay. طيب خلينا في ظل التوتر الاقتصادي والسياسي داخل أعضاء حلف الناتو. يعني كيف يعمل التحالف الآن في ظل هذه التوترات؟
Which alliance are you talking about? Still NATO?
NATO, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, if Trump were to be succeeded by Vance, we know that you've got somebody coming from a similar ideological viewpoint, in fact, probably harder. Trump doesn't really, he travels pretty light ideologically. He's a business tycoon. He likes to strike a deal. He used to give money to the Democrats under Clinton. Trump could just as easily have become a Democrat politician as a Republican. It's just at the moment he decided to get involved in politics, there was more of a gap on the Republican side. And all this sort of stuff he does with the Christian right in America, it doesn't really reflect anything Donald Trump believes. He's not even a Christian. It's just completely a matter of convenience to him. Vance, however, I think has actually believed some of this nonsense and is more of a zealot than Trump. It's hard to see Trump being succeeded by a mainstream Republican of the sort that we've seen in the past. So either he is replaced by a right-wing Republican who could be worse than him, philosophically, perhaps not behaviorally, or he's replaced by a Democrat. But even if he's replaced by a Democrat, things won't just go back to how they were. You know, doubts have been cast in European minds that won't be uncast. Questions have been asked that can't be unasked. And things will never be quite the same again. I hope there are still shared values. There's still an awful lot of shared transatlantic economic trade. But it'll never go back to being quite the same again.
لكن السؤال الملح هنا كيف يعني كيف أو ما هي الوسائل اللي بتستخدمها الأعضاء حاليا في ظل التوترات دي لإدارة الخلاف؟
Well, here I think the diplomatic stance taken by Starmer, by Ursula von der Leyen, by Macron, by the Germans as well, is prudent. They don't want to declare diplomatic war on Trump, or the alliance will rupture in a way that can never be healed again. It's can be frustrating for Europeans who are appalled by some of Trump's antics that their leaders don't speak out more boldly and more explicitly against it. But it is quite prudent. They know that Europe still needs its partnership with America, and they don't want ultimately to rupture it. All a bit easier for Canadian leaders. Trump's absolutely outrageous existential threat to Canada, saying that he wants Canada to be the 51st state. I mean, any Canadian leader has got to speak up boldly and explicitly against that. And Trudeau did, and of course Carney has. And amusingly, the Canadians were about to elect a right-wing conservative who was very much on the same political wavelength as Donald Trump. But Trump starts saying, I want Canada to be the 51st state. And the whole election swings around in Canada, and the electorate says, no, thank you very much, and re-elects the Liberals and gets a new Prime Minister in Carney, who is a real force for good on the world stage. So it was much easier for Trudeau and Carney to really take Trump on, and it worked for them. And actually, Trump does quite respect people taking him on explicitly, because, for him it's all power play.
لكن المفارقة أو العجيب يعني دولة زي كندا استطاعت الرد بهذه الحدة على ترامب لما فكر انه يقول يضم كندا كولاية 53 للولايات المتحدة، لكن لم يفعل أحد من القادة الأوروبيين نفس الشيء لما قال هاخد جرينلاند بطريقة أو بأخرى، سواء بالطريقة the good way or the bad way. إيه تفسيرك لده؟ هل لا زال الحلف يعني مش عايز يخش في عراك دبلوماسي مع الولايات المتحدة وبيحاول يحل المشاكل ديت بالقناة الدبلوماسية حتى وإن كانت غير مرئية؟
I agree with you that tone was different, but actually I was quite impressed the extent to which Europe, with one voice, condemned Trump's ambitions towards Greenland and rallied to the support of Denmark, who diplomatically are Greenland, represent Greenland. I mean, I think it's also worth saying that Trump, while threatening a military takeover of Greenland, I think was really hoping to buy it. And I think
وكان في ديل في الولايات الأولى بالفعل وأوروبا رفضتها.
Yes. And there's history here. I mean, the Russians bought Alaska. Actually, they bought some of the US states going back further from France. So it's not completely unprecedented, but I don't think Europe wants Trump to buy Greenland, even if he offers very good money. And I mean, let's be honest, there are only 57,000 people in Greenland. Trump could offer them all a very eye-watering sum and still have lots of spare change left over. I mean, the minerals in Greenland are seriously valuable, and I think Trump would be far better to try and buy some mineral licenses from Greenland and from Denmark, if it's the commercial aspect that he's interested in. If it's more genuinely security, and I mean, there is a point there. I mean, Greenland is very strategically placed in security terms. Then he's had a treaty with Greenland since 1951, which permits America to establish whatever military capabilities it feels it needs in Greenland. And it would be welcomed and supported by Denmark and Europe in so doing. And indeed, if Trump was only willing to breathe a little bit of fresh life back into NATO, the other NATO countries, particularly those in the north of Europe, could, should and would join in that effort. But Trump isn't really concerned about Greenland's security. He's concerned about America's security. But he can put whatever military capabilities in Greenland he wants. Yeah, I think if we keep NATO alive, albeit perhaps on a life support mechanism, let's wait and see what comes next.
طيب في حالة تضارب المصالح وزي ما شايفين ناخد جرينلاند كمثال، إذا يعني وصل الحد للآخر زي ما بنقول بالمصري، من الذي يستطيع فرض قراره؟ هل اللي عنده قوة عسكرية أكبر في داخل الحلف، وبتكلم تحديدا في الناتو، ولا من يدفع أكثر؟
I mean, I think Trump was so pleased with himself after grabbing the Venezuelan president and carting him off to an American jail that he started believing that he could sort of invade anywhere and do anything. And that was the moment at which his rhetoric about Greenland suddenly ramped up again. Whether in truth the same people in America who I suggested might come between him and the nuclear button would come between him and literally an invasion of Greenland, I don't know, but I sincerely hope so. And I think there's a pretty good chance that they would. But ultimately, if Trump did launch a military invasion of Greenland, then he'll get it. No one's capable of stopping him.
That's deep.
That's the truth.
طيب أنا برضو عايز أعرف من يعني نفترض في خلاف آخر غير جرينلاند وفي تضارب مصالح جوه حلف الناتو، من يستطيع حل هذا الخلاف بأي أداة؟
Okay.
أو ما هي الأداة الأكثر فاعلية؟
I mean, if it's a conflict of interest between America and Europe, is this what we're talking about? Yes. I mean, the NATO mechanism may be up to a point, but bilateral diplomacy, multilateral diplomacy, Britain likes to think we have this special relationship with America because we have over time been their closest ally. Leaving the EU didn't make us a more useful ally to America. It made us a less useful ally, but we would still try and play our part. I mean, if we get into a situation of trade sanctions and economic war, this is bad news for everyone. I mean, this will have an impact on the global economy that does no one any good. It'll affect China, it'll affect everyone. There aren't really, there's no easy answer to your question. It would be through diplomacy, and if diplomacy broke down and didn't work, you'd essentially end up in a sort of Cold War, I suppose, between the two.
The allies themselves.
Yeah. I think so. But you see, it's Trump, isn't it? It all comes back to, and he published a book in the mid-80s, The Art of Making a Deal.
بس it's not about Trump. يعني هو ليس معتمد فقط على ترامب، لكن زي ما حضرتك ذكرت ان الايديولوجية ترامب بتسافر عبر الدول، حتى في انجلترا او المملكة المتحدة نفسها. نفس ناجل فراج دلوقتي في صعود، وفي يعني prediction يعني
I agree, and this is the worry. This is the concern.
فهو مش شخص ideology.
Yeah, I mean, actually, if Trump continues for another 3 years acting on the might is right modus operandi, that is going to be damn difficult to stop and turn back. And if I were in Taiwan right now, I'd be quite nervous because it was perfectly clear under Biden, who had tooled up for a defense of Taiwan, that if the Chinese were to invade Taiwan, they'd got America to deal with. It seems quite unlikely now that if China invaded Taiwan, Trump would do very much about it. So you're absolutely right. Others will follow this example, and the world becomes a dangerous place as a result. I mean, that said, you could argue, and probably many people in the Arab world would, that America's been doing this for decades. I personally, my party and I, and lots of people in mainland Europe, opposed the invasion of Iraq. We didn't think it was legal. We didn't think Saddam Hussein had weapons of mass destruction. We didn't think it would end well. And my God, we were right. It didn't end well. But it wouldn't be entirely unprecedented for the US to start throwing its weight around militarily. And if others take their cue from that, the world becomes a more unstable and a more dangerous place.
بالكلام عن الحرب، عندنا في حروب جارية، واحدة منها شبه انتهت. الحرب كانت على سوريا، الحرب في غزة، والحرب في أوكرانيا. والواضح أن القوى المسيطرة أيا كانت أو القوى المتصارعة أيا كانت بتميل لإدارة الصراع وليس لحسمه. هل ده فعلا، هل يعني حضرتك توافق على وجهة النظر دي؟ وليه بتميل لإدارة الصراع وليس لحسمه؟
That's a very interesting question. I said to you a minute or two ago, I can't see any imminent prospect of a solution in Ukraine. Why is that? Well, because it wouldn't really suit either side. I mean, it would suit them for the bloodshed to end, but there's no solution at the moment that's going to really suit anyone. So it's kind of, in realpolitik, it's kind of worth both sides fighting on. I mean, the Russians have got the upper hand, but they're only advancing this much at a time. I mean, they're not winning outright. And I suppose if you are Zelensky and Ukraine, you think, well, goodness, we've sacrificed so much already. Why would we capitulate now? If we keep this going another couple of years, the economic pain that we are inflicting on Russia has to ultimately weaken their hand to a point where they might settle for something more acceptable than there's any prospect of them doing now. And if you are Putin, you're thinking, well, Americans have already stopped funding the Ukrainian effort. European taxpayers must be getting pretty fatigued by continuing to feed the Ukrainian machine. If we keep this going a couple more years, their resistance is going to diminish to the point where they'll accept something better than we're going to get out of them now. So in a horrible, macabre, depressing sort of a way, it strategically suits both of them to keep on fighting. I mean, in human terms, this doesn't make a lot of sense, but you sort of see, in a horrible way, why. I mean, this idea Trump had that he would be able to sort this out in a day once he'd taken office was always a fantasy. I mean, it's far more difficult than that.
هناك في سؤال صراحة دلوقتي جاء على بالي كده، هو مش متحضر، لكن من خلال ما حضرتك ذكرت، يعني التاكس بيرز في أوروبا هم اللي بيدفعوا عشان as you mentioned feed the Ukrainian machine. طيب ليه يعني في صراحة إن أوروبا وقادة أوروبا والناتو بيدعم أوكرانيا صراحة، ده مش من تحت الترابيزة، صراحة معروفة للقاصي والداني إن أوروبا بتدعم والناتو بيدعم أوكرانيا ضد روسيا عسكريا، وبوتين يعلم ده. ليه بوتين ما يشنش الهجوم على القادة الأوروبيين مباشرة؟ بدل ما يدخل الحرب ongoing war دي forever زي ما بيقولوا للأبد.
Because this war, limited though it is currently bleeding Russia dry in resource terms. And although Putin loves a bit of strong rhetoric, he hasn't at the moment really got the capacity to now, here and now, prosecute a war going further into Europe.
لكن بيهدد من وقت لآخر. حتى نشر في بعض الأحيان من وزارة الدفاع
الروسية. Oh yes, he does. Yes, he does issue threats from time to time. But the reality is, to the extent that he's at war with Europe right now, it's cutting undersea cables and cyber attacks, espionage, Russian money in Western politics. It's sort of asymmetric war at the moment. I mean, the reason that Europe and the European taxpayer is willing to fund the war in Ukraine is that if Putin succeeds in Ukraine, where next? I mean, if you're Poland and you've spent 40 years under Russian empire between 1945 and 1989, this is not something you want to go back to. Mm-hmm. Ditto Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, and all those other countries on the border. And I think, the Germans have a pretty nasty history with the Russians, and all of us in the north of Europe feel threatened by this. And we regard the defense of Ukraine as a sort of front line, and we're next. I mean, maybe if you're in Spain and Portugal, it feels further away, but I don't think this is really the way Europeans think. Ukraine is a part of Europe. It was a sovereign nation. There are lots of Ukrainian people in other European countries, and an attack by Russia on Ukraine feels like the beginning of an attack on Europe as a whole. I mean, the reality is, Putin regularly says in his broadcasts to the Russian people, we are at war with Europe and NATO, but they're not. I mean, if they were, the military capabilities available to Western countries could be inflicting colossal damage inside Russian sovereign territory at the moment. And they're not at war with us, and we're not inflicting that damage on them. If he wants...
لكن لا زلتم تساعدون أوكرانيا عسكريا.
Yes, we continue to support Ukraine because Russia invaded Ukraine. Ukraine hasn't invaded in any significant way Russia. It's a defensive stance on the part of Europe. I mean, if he decides to attack Europe, he'll discover what a war with Europe looks like.
Mm-hmm. لكن برضو الملاحظ هنا الحرب بالوكالة. يعني هل الحروب الآن يعني عصرناها في الحرب في سوريا، في الحرب في غزة، والآن برضو في الحرب على أوكرانيا، أن القوى المسيطرة أو القوى العظمى بتميل للحرب بالوكالة وليس الحرب مباشرة مع الخصم. كيف تفسر هذا؟ هل لجانب استراتيجي ولا كان جانب اقتصادي؟
Yes. I mean, this has been true for decades. It's certainly been true since the Second World War. Mm-hmm. I mean, we can think historically of all sorts of effectively proxy wars that have taken place. I mean, this is quite interesting, the extent to which some of the Russian allies in some of those proxy wars, well, perhaps it's an overstatement to say they have been defeated, but they haven't done very well in some of these proxy wars lately, and maybe Russia could have done more to help them. It is further evidence, I'm suggesting, of the fact that they are, I wouldn't say crippled, but hobbled by what the war in Ukraine is costing their economy, and finding people to fight these wars. I mean, they've had North Koreans on the front line in Ukraine. They've got people they've lured from other parts of the world with fake offers of jobs in hotels and factories and so on, who, when they get to Russia, just find they're put into the army and sent to the front line in Ukraine. Their life expectancy is very short. But, I mean, the effort it is taking Russia to feed the war machine is really very, very significant. And it was a miscalculation on Putin's part to invade Ukraine in the first place. And you can see why he perhaps thought he would get away with it. He invaded 2 bits of Georgia in 2008, and broadly speaking, nobody did anything. He invaded Crimea in 2014, and broadly speaking, nobody did anything. You can sort of see why he maybe thought he could invade Ukraine and get away with it. But he was wrong, and the extent to which Europe rallied to Ukraine's support, and so did America under Biden, I think would have taken him aback quite in quite a big way.
طيب خلينا برضو نتكلم في الحرب الوكالة. والبعض بيرى أن تطويل أمد الحرب الوكالة هو ما هو إلا اقتصاد عسكري عالمي جديد، نوع من الاقتصاد الجديد في عصرنا الحاضر. هل تتفق مع وجهة النظر دي؟
Yeah, I mean, there'll be those who supply the wars. I'm not going to name them, but there are countries who are perfectly capable of backing both sides in a war at the same time. We saw this in Afghanistan. There were players who were funding the Taliban and supporting the West at one and the same time. This isn't particularly...
من هذه الدول؟ تقصد من؟
No, I'm not going to. But the fact is that they're there, and there are people always who have made money out of war and who have an incentive to keep it going. And that will always be so. It's just part of reality and human nature.
كيف ترى الوضع الحالي واستقراء بما يحدث الآن عالميا، سواء إذا كان في أوروبا في الشرق الأوسط؟ ماذا سيحدث لاحقا؟
Well, I mean, all eyes now, I guess, are on Iran, and apparently Trump has a beautiful armada sailing to Iran. I do not have a crystal ball. I don't know what's going to happen there. I mean, Trump came to office saying America had got involved in too many wars elsewhere and he wasn't going to do any more. So he's given all this rhetoric threatening the Iranian regime that if it was brutal with the protesters, they would face the consequences. And now the beautiful armada is on the high seas. But what is he really going to do? I don't know. I really don't. I mean, I think the situation in Iran is a tragedy. I think the situation in Syria has been tragic for a long time. These are beautiful countries that could historically have been so culturally significant. They've given so much to the world and could be again, were they not riven with all these problems. I mean, the West's involvement in Iran over time has not been a shining example of goodness. And if the Americans play a part now in regime change in Iran, I'm not sure if that doesn't store up more problems in the long run. The wonderful thing would be if change came in Iran at the behest of the Iranian people. If it requires American interference, well, that's always going to be part of the equation, isn't it? A bit like the Shah's regime always seemed to rely on a Western patronage.
لكن بالنظر للحوادث المماثلة، مثلا الغزو الأمريكي للعراق، أفغانستان، لم يثمر عن أي إصلاحات، بالعكس كان دمار في كل البنية التحتية، دمار في الاقتصاد، حتى أدى الأزمة لاجئين لأوروبا نفسها. فلو هنفترض أن السوفرينتي أو المبدأ السيادة القوى الغربية دايما بترفعه، ليه رفعته هنا شوية عند أوكرانيا؟ وفي إيران دلوقتي إذا كان شأن داخلي، هم أحق الناس بأن هم يحلوه داخليا، وليس بأن حاملة طائرات تروح على الشواطئ جنب إيران وتهددهم. يعني شوية في مفارقة وفي double standards يعني.
I think that's kind of what I was just getting at. Yes. I mean, I think Iran needs regime change. It breaks my heart to see young Iranian people being murdered en masse, as they have been in the last few weeks. But I desperately want change in Iran to be something that the Iranian people bring about themselves. I think if it's done under force from the USA, whatever follows will be tainted by that. This would not be a very good, lasting settlement, I think.
سير نيك هارفي، وصلنا لنهاية الحلقة. كان الحوار ماتع جدا. شكرا لحضرتك، شكرا لقبول الدعوة. شكرا لكم أعزائي المشاهدين، ونشوفكم إن شاء الله الحلقة الجاية من أصلي.